Got the new guy rebuilt. Here's the old. A little before shot. Cross member drive shaft. Got the jack stands. Putting that jack stand on right now. So the good thing is you can climb under this car anyway when the jack stand isn't up. As in, it's the first time I'm gonna have the car on jack stands when I'm working on it, because before I could just climb under there and do everything. So you got the diff, right, the differential, and you have the drive shaft, and then it connects with these universal joints or U-joints. You got a couple U-bolts that holds it in, so I have to take these U-bolts off. You gotta take all four of these off, and then you have to take the middle bearing off. So here's the U-bolt, comes off, 2 bolts, and then you have the U-joint right there, so that's where you kind of get a nice new shiny one. So when I take the second one off here, and you remove the drive shaft, the car is like in neutral at that point. You know, there's no brake, because the parking brake isn't locking up the rear shaft of the transmission, which therefore locks up the drive shaft, which locks up your diff. So I have the car jacked up, so on these jack stands, and then I also have the front wheels chalked, and I'm on fairly level ground, so and I saw you give it a nice shake down, make sure it doesn't go anywhere. But there you go. So now both sides are off, and this one has a middle beam though I have to take off next. So here's the center bearing that connects to your drive shaft, the slip yoke, and then you have this kind of angle piece that locks into here, and then that's where we removed it down there last time. So okay. So there's the yoke. And actually I was able to slip it out by just removing this. And it's still attached to the bottom there. But I could take it right off, but for now I'm just gonna leave it, see if I can do everything else. But if I need to move it, I can. But there you go, it just slips right out, splines into there. So you get the real seal draining right now. And it seals up against this smooth part. Okay, next step is we have the pan bolts, so they go all the way around. And the original models don't have a drain plug. So like the new ones you get will have a drain plug right here. But this one you basically have to drop the pan. But since I have it leaking out the back, and then this trans cooler line, when I was taking it off to test it, I kind of broke it. So this thing should be pretty drained out from that, and then this. So now it's time to just start disassembling everything. There you go, I removed like half the bolts. And then all the fluid above the pan will start to drain out. Alright, so here's your torque converter. Here's a flywheel. There's your starter. So you're familiar with that. And this attaches to the camshaft or whatever. Goes into here, and this is what pumps it. There's these bolts right here. See it? 3 of those around. So I got, one of them was already off. So what you gotta do here is, yeah, that's good. Just take 2. I think it's this guy, right? Got 9/16. It's got 14 mil. You can just slide it on there. You gotta get the back side of it, and then you can just take it off. Just loose. But the thing is, like, so it's, yeah. So basically, you're gonna take those off, and then oh man, I was moving it earlier. Whatever. You can either use a starter to move it, which I wouldn't recommend, or you can pry it. I was prying it earlier and it was moving. But I gotta get this one and then one at the top. Alright, next we're gonna take off those transcooler lines. Alright, there they are disconnected. I gotta get this bolt off to get that kickdown cable off. And then the filler tube. And then that, oh, and the vacuum modulator on this side. Alright, so the other side's done. We have to do, that's the driveline gauges, what puts it in park. Drive, neutral, reverse, all that. So you just gotta undo it. It's in neutral now. So this is kind of documenting that that line goes to like the 10 o'clock, 10, 11 o'clock. We gotta put it back on the same way. So the torque converter's loose. Drive shaft is off. The right side is done. This is the speedo cable, man. Sorry. So see that? That has a gear in there which drives the basically your ratio, and then tells you how fast you're going. So, but that's just untwist. And then this miscellaneous stuff, like this is like a TSP or something, or transmission controlled spark or TCI. Those just bolt into the bell housing bolts. So what we got to do is remove this, support the jack, support the engine. So when you support the engine, I got the other car jack underneath that oil pan, and transmission jack, and then we'll take this cross member off, and then we'll take the bell housing bolts off, and then shake it loose and it should come off. All right, so I get the Harbor Freight transmission jack, ratchet strap on the top. So the reason I'm doing this now is because this comes out next, right? So most of the weight is on this, and then shared with the bell housing. So I'm going to jack this up, and then I'm going to take the place of the transfer case. Then I'll jack the engine up just a little bit to put pressure on it, and then I can take the bell housing bolts off, and then it should come loose. So, I mean, so yeah, that's working. There's the jack. There's the transfer case. So, on both sides. Now the transmission is supported by a jack, and the only thing holding it up is the front bolts. So time to take those off. Gotta jack the engine up too. Here's the setup for the engine support. All you're doing is just, see that? See how the whole engine goes up? That's all you're doing. Just give it a nice little pressure so that way the engine's supported. So that should be good enough. You just want to make it, I think the engine would be fine without it because you have the engine mounts. You have the suspension right in the front, but it doesn't hurt just to keep that there. So, all right, we'll take the bell housing bolts off and then try to lower this transmission. So I'm taking these bell housing bolts off, so that one's off. It's got the ground cable attached. So I'll put this over here. So you don't have to take the starter off. Technically, it's not attached to the transmission. It's just spinning the flywheel, right? That starts the car. But on this G, or this van basically, the exhaust is pretty tight, as in you'll be able to squeeze around it, but taking this much away so I can just come straight down with it rather than backing it up and then trying to get it out, so it'll just be easier. So I just gotta take 2 bolts off that go into the engine block, and then I'll have to hang it up so it's not dangling. All right, so you got this one, that one, and then 2 more over there, and then that should be it. All right. Just took off all the bolts. All right, see the gap? Transmission is disconnected. That's supporting the engine. The alignment dowels, good, are off. So now we have to basically shimmy everything around until we get it out. So the exhaust was getting in the way, so I took that hanger off, and then I had to disconnect it from the headers. So it's just a couple of bolts there. So the plan is I'm just going to slide it off and then manhandle it over to the other side. All right, here's the old one. There it is. I just pulled it out. So there's the flywheel. There's all the connections. So putting it back together is actually gonna be pretty easy because you just have to, all I really care about is putting the drive shaft and the exhaust and the parking linkage on. So that way I can put it in park. The speedo gear right there, that doesn't affect anything. The vacuum modulator just slips on. That's the fill cap. The trans-coolant lines I think I broke, but I have new ones coming in. But yeah, you don't have to connect everything to put it back in park and everything, put it back in neutral. So I'll get the new one on the jack and put it in. So here's the new one. Hopefully everything works. Here's the old one. So remember I rebuilt this one. All seals, everything torqued. So everything's the same except for the linkage, but just gotta take this off and hook up what's already on there. And there's the dirty one. All right, so now it's time to do everything in reverse order. So I just cleaned up the mating surface between the engine block and the the transmission. So you have these dowels here, these alignment dowels. You have where it bolts in. This is where the end of the torque converter goes, rides against, and then when you lock in your torque converter here, it spins it, torque converter spins, the rest of the transmission goes to drive shaft and then out the diff. So what we're gonna have to do, there's the dipstick, probably should have took that out. What we're gonna have to do now is put the transmission back on, bolt it up to the bell housing, and then put the transmission
supporting bracket if we're gonna transfer or whatever it is. And then everything else is just connecting after that point. Slide the drive shaft in and all that. All right, so I shined the support bracket for the transmission, just knock all the dirt off. Here's the original torque converter. I'm still gonna use it. The new one's like $400, $300. So I drained the old fluid out there that was a little black. Just gonna put some, there you go. That's it all. You just wanna put some in there so it's not completely dry. This cranked up, so this is nice and red now. You shouldn't use a torque converter again because you don't know what. I mean, your transmission went bad, so you say all the gunk probably got in the torque converter. But my whole build probably cost like $300 maybe. And I'm not buying a torque converter just because of how expensive it is. So I'll rebuild that one, get a new torque converter, make it all nice. This one I just need to go forward and backwards. And since this one was working forward, and I know the torque converter was working prior, versus I have that one I bought that came with the one I just rebuilt. But I'm not gonna try, I don't know what's up with that one, so I'd rather just use this. All right, so I'm gonna put this on the transmission. All right, here's the transmission. Get your torque converter. All right, we got the new fluid in there. Torque converter is gonna spline over the oil pump. So filled it up, so I'm probably gonna spill a bunch. But you just put it on. I bottomed it out. Spin it. Oh, there we go. Ready? Bottomed out. Spin. One. No, that might have been the second bottom out. I think we're in there now. Yeah, I'm in. All right, so I got the new one on the jack. Huge pain. I had to use the other jack, slide it under. This exhaust is welded on, so I can't really take it all off. I wish I could, but I would have to cut it. I don't want to do that. I finally got it on. Put the torque converter on. Out there, took it off. Came back, put the torque converter back on because it was much lighter. But now I'm going to jack it up and put the bell housing in, and then the support transfer case or whatever the hell it is. All right, so for the past 2 hours, I thought the engine was out of alignment because I put this on backwards, so I had it flip-flopped. Because these holes right here that mount in here, they line up perfectly now. Before, when I had it flopped, the holes were like over here because this is offset. So I thought that when I took the transmission out, that the engine like sunk over when it was stopped being connected. So I tried jacking up the engine back and forth, and then I like literally tried like pushing on it, and I was like, man, what happened? So I was looking up the mounts over there and seeing if anything moved. And I was actually looking at previous pictures from when I first got the van, but then I measured this, and then I saw that these holes aren't centered, because when you look at this, it's not. It's over here. So it is supposed to be over here because this is where the bolts were. But when you flip it, it's right in the middle, and then this So I thought I messed something up, but now we're back in business.